Tonight, we're traveling back to an era when Bing Crosby dominated the airwaves. Jell-O qualified as a salad, and every American home carried the unmistakable aroma of pine, cigarette smoke, and something that might have once been ham. Yes, welcome to Christmas in the 1950s, a time of tinsel-covered turkeys and enough incandescent lights to blind a reindeer. Before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of nostalgic chaos. And feel free to share your strangest family Christmas tradition in the comments. Or, if that feels like too much pressure, just tell me what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, switch on a box fan for that perfect background hum, and settle in. Maybe tuck your feet under the blanket, just in case a rogue pine needle is lying in wait. Because we're about to ask some important questions. What did it really feel like to wake up in a 1950s American suburb on Christmas morning? Was the eggnog truly bottomless? Were those sweaters as itchy as they looked? Was Santa a jolly icon? Or your chain-smoking uncle in a moth-eaten suit? And how many renditions of White Christmas could a person endure before hurling a fruitcake into the neighbor's yard? So congratulations, you just opened your eyes in December 1956. You're wrapped in flannel, smelling faintly of aqua velva, and someone is shouting for you to get downstairs before your mother loses what little patience she has left. Good luck. You crack open one eye and instantly regret it. The room is freezing. There's frost on the inside of your window, and your pajamas are made of a fabric so flammable it's practically a dare. But the smell of percolating coffee and the muffled sound of Bing Crosby on the radio drag you out of bed because it's Christmas morning. And in 1950s America, that's basically the Super Bowl, the Oscars, and Black Friday rolled into one. Somehow, it's colder inside your house than it is in your neighbor's unheated garage. Central heating, that's a luxury for future generations. Here, you rely on the ancient art of layering. Flannel pajamas, mismatched wool socks, and if you're smart, a bathrobe borrowed from an older sibling who will definitely demand it back before noon. Your breath puffs out in little clouds. You touch your nose, and yes, it's just as icy as your toes. The wallpaper printed in some relentlessly cheerful floral pattern has started to peel from the corners. Ice crystals glisten on the glass, forming abstract art more impressive than anything your cousin ever made at summer camp. The faint comforting whiff of dust and last night's boiled potatoes hangs in the air, mingling with the scent of pine needles. And whatever cologne your dad insists on using, somewhere beneath it all is the distant tang of mothballs. Because every 1950s American household came with at least 3 boxes of them, often used as emergency stocking stuffers when all else failed. You listen. There's a deep meditative silence, punctuated by the distant creaks of the house settling, expanding and contracting like a living creature that frankly resents your presence. In the distance, the unmistakable clatter of your mother's slippers against linoleum, the true herald of Christmas morning. The coffee percolator bubbles away on the kitchen counter and the radio, because every good holiday has a soundtrack. Hums through the static, crooning about white Christmases, chestnuts, and a world without existential dread. You hesitate at the edge of your bed, weighing the risk of crossing the ice-cold linoleum floor with bare feet. Socks are the difference between comfort and the medieval torture of stepping directly on a tiles cold enough to qualify as a fifth Great Lake. As you tiptoe to the window, you pull aside the curtain, half expecting to see Santa's sleigh careening across the yard. Instead, there's just your neighbor already outside, shoveling the driveway in his pajamas and a hat with ear flaps, because nothing says holiday spirit like mild frostbite. Outside, the world is a silent, sparkling postcard. Snow so white it almost hurts your eyes. Rooftops outlined in icing and drifts, so deep you're convinced you could lose a small cousin in one if you're not careful. Every mailbox sports a hat of snow. Icicles dangle from gutters like crystal chandeliers, and somewhere a stray dog is already peeing on your snowman. It's magical if you ignore the numbness setting into your fingers. Downstairs, the heat from the oven barely keeps pace with the Arctic draft whistling through every gap in the windows. Your father is methodically jiggling the thermostat, a ritual that accomplishes nothing except heating the section of wall directly behind it. He's wearing a short-sleeved button-up under his robe because he believes in suffering for tradition. The living room is dim except for the multicolored glow of the tree strung with glass bulbs, tinsel, and more extension cords, and is strictly recommended by the fire department. Somewhere, a sibling is already wide awake and plotting to be the first one to the gifts. You catch the faint crackle of wrapping paper being tested for weak spots and a chorus of shushing as everyone tries to maintain the illusion that they haven't been up since 4:30. The whole house buzzes with anticipation, caffeine, and the vague threat of a Christmas morning meltdown if someone tries to open a present out of turn. But for one quiet, shivering moment, you stand at the window, watching the world outside glow in that blue pre-dawn light. Everything is peaceful. Your nose is frozen. Your pajamas are one spark away from spontaneous combustion. And you're still convinced this is the best morning of the year. Because for all the discomfort and chaos, Christmas in the 1950s means hope, wonder, and the deeply held belief that anything is possible, even if it's just getting through breakfast without breaking a tooth on burnt toast. And as you shuffle toward the warmth of the kitchen, you're grateful for it all. The cold, the chaos, the caffeine, and the memory of a world where even winter seemed a little more magical. You're 8 years old. You've been awake since 4:30 a.m., and you're pretty sure you can hear your parents whisper fighting in the kitchen about how Santa needs 5 more minutes. The rules are clear. No one goes downstairs until Dad says so. Meanwhile, you and your siblings are perfecting your stealth commando crawl to the staircase landing, trembling with anticipation and a truly unsafe amount of Christmas Eve candy still in your system. You're not just awake, you are vibrating. You have enough sugar in your bloodstream to light up a modest city block. And if Santa actually did drop through the chimney, you'd probably tackle him in a full-body headlock before he could say ho ho ho. You glance around at your fellow conspirators. The baby mercifully asleep. Your little brother already chewing the head off a gingerbread man pilfered from last night's cookie plate. Your older sister who claims she's over Christmas, but is currently wearing 3 pairs of socks and a look of mortal anxiety. Every year, the adults claim you're not allowed to go downstairs until the sun comes up. Every year, you try to negotiate that sunrise occurs whenever the first person opens their eyes. There's a lot of debate about the technical definition of dawn. Meanwhile, your dad is probably hiding the batteries to the noisy toys, and your mom is inventing new lies about why Santa needs extra time to finish the magic. There's a lot of magic happening in the kitchen, apparently. Mainly the magic of hiding receipts, assembling anything that requires more than 3 screws, and cursing softly under your breath. So, you wait and you wait, and you wait some more, stretching every minute into an eternity. You try to pass the time with whispered arguments about what Santa brought, which gifts might be yours, and whether that rustling sound in the living room is a mouse or just wishful thinking. You debate the all-important question. Was that a sleigh bell, or did the dog just knock something over again? Time moves differently for children on Christmas morning. Einstein probably wrote about this somewhere. Time dilation in the presence of unwrapped presents and forbidden living rooms. 10 minutes on a landing feels like 2 geological epochs. You stare down the dim staircase, scanning for movement. Every now and then, a parent's shadow flits across the hallway, proof that the grown-ups are up, but still barricading the magic. At some point, someone always cracks. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's your sibling with a bladder the size of a thimble who accidentally has to use the bathroom at the exact moment Mom is coming up the stairs. Suddenly, the landing becomes the set of a Cold War spy drama. You're flat on your stomach, elbows digging into the carpet, eyes locked on the glimmer of tree lights leaking through the living room door. The baby whimpers. A distant coffee percolator gurgles ominously. Somewhere a dog's size with the long-suffering patience of a creature who knows what's coming. You invent new games just to keep yourself occupied. Who can hold their breath the longest? Who can balance the most jelly beans on their forehead without laughing? Who can inch closest to the do not cross line at the top step before mom issues a threat involving no dessert and a return to your own bed? It's not so much waiting as it is psychological boot camp. By the time you're actually allowed downstairs, you've survived more tension than the average Cold War summit. Finally, after what feels like hours, but is definitely still pitch black outside, there's the sound of the living room door creaking open. Dad clears his throat. All right, you can come down now, but walk. Don't run, which is of course a challenge no child has ever obeyed in the history of humanity. What follows is less a walk and more a stampede. Bare feet skidding across cold tile, pajama pants flapping, voices escalating from whispers to squeals as you round the corner and see it. The tree, the stockings, the shining chaos that is Christmas morning. It's chaos. It's wonder. It's the best kind of beat 'em. You made it. You survived the wait. And for the next 5 minutes at least, the universe is made entirely of hope, wrapping paper, and the satisfying crackle of anticipation finally gloriously answered. Finally, the moment arrives. Dad flicks on the lights, and you're momentarily blinded by the glare bouncing off enough tinsel to interfere with shortwave radio. The tree looks like it's been decorated by a glitter-obsessed raccoon. Underneath, a mountain of presents wrapped, of course, in enough cellophane to suffocate a small town beckons. It's pure 1950s magic complete with asbestos snow. For a split second, you don't move. The family is frozen at the threshold, squinting into the living room like you've just stepped onto the set of a game show. In the stark, humming glow of that brand-new electricity-guzzling ceiling fixture, the Christmas tree is the undisputed star. 6 feet of pine branches valiantly supporting 20 pounds of glass bless, and at least 3 generations of homemade ornaments. Every bough sagged beneath silver tinsel, hand-placed by children whose spatial reasoning skills peaked at clump in one spot until gravity takes over. At the very top sits a slightly off-center angel, her porcelain face staring serenely into the void, blissfully unaware that her only job is to keep the tree from cooing over and crushing the TV. The tree skirt is a faded red circle already sprinkled with pine needles, cookie crumbs, and the first hints of wrapping paper carnage. But you're not looking at the angel or the skirt. You're staring at the presents. Stacks of them, boxes of every possible size, all wrapped in that crinkly mid-century paper, so shiny you could use it to signal passing aircraft. Every present has a bow, some bows the size of pie plate. The tags are written in your mom's looping cursive, carefully labeled with names to prevent the outbreak of sibling warfare. And then there's the smell, a heady blend of scotch tape, waxy candles, last night's piney bath salts, and just a whiff of ozone from the sheer amount of static electricity building up in the carpeting. If you listen closely, you can actually hear the faint crackle of Dad's blood pressure as he mentally tallies up the receipt pile. But the real showstopper is the snow, if you can call it that. Sprinkled around the base of the tree and the mantle is a liberal dusting of asbestos-laced fluff. The miracle fireproof fake snow that seemed like a good idea before anyone read the warning label. If you're lucky, you'll only inhale a few particles before breakfast. And then you notice the lights. Multicolored bulbs, each the size of a ping-pong ball and twice as hot, blink in a rhythm that can only be described as Christmas meets mild electrocution. There's one bulb that never works, no matter how many times Dad threatens it. The cord snakes across the living room floor, cleverly hidden under the world's lumpiest rug, ready to trip the first adult who dares approach. Now, if you take a step back and squint, the whole scene would fit right in on a postcard or a department store window. But up close, it's a glorious, chaotic mess. An explosion of tradition, consumerism, and the kind of optimism that only comes from believing everything can be fixed with tape, tinsel, and a strong cup of Sanker. You look at your parents. Mom is already straightening the stockings for the third time, and Dad is clutching his coffee like a lifeline. Your siblings are doing that slow-motion, full-body shimmy, straining against the ancient code of wait your turn that's enforced every year and broken just as often. There is a ritual here. Dad gives a speech about taking it slow and appreciating the moment. No one listens. Someone starts shaking a box, trying to guess what's inside by sound, which is as effective as reading tea leaves in a blender. Your little brother is eyeing a suspiciously large package and plotting the shortest route across the minefield of gifts. And then, finally, someone gets a nod. The wrapping paper flies. The room erupts. The mountain of gifts shrinks with each shriek. Every torn ribbon and every triumphant thank you that is mostly just code. For what is this? And how does it work? For one shining moment, the world is nothing but joy. Tinsel and the knowledge that even if half these toys break by New Year's right now, this is what happiness looks like. A 1950s living room, too bright, too loud, a little bit hazardous, and absolutely perfect. And just like that, the great reveal is over. But the memories, glittery, lopsided, and still slightly dangerous, stick around for a lifetime. Stockings are up first, and you learn the real meaning of anticipation. Socks filled with candy canes, a handful of walnuts, and that traditional orange in the toe. Why? Because in the 1950s, scurvy is still apparently a threat. And nothing says Christmas like citrus-based disappointment. You survey the scene, stockings lined up along the mantel, each one painstakingly labeled, sagging under the weight of low-budget holiday optimism. These aren't the deluxe faux fur numbers you'll find on Pinterest in 2025. No, these are suspiciously long socks, possibly once belonging to your grandfather, repurposed for holiday use with a few sprigs of holly and a safety pin that will definitely draw blood before breakfast. They hang at precarious angles, stuffed until they resemble something found in a natural history museum. Exhibits on the early American practice of hoping for the best. Inside the loot is a carefully curated mix of treats and head-scratchers. There are candy canes, strictly the red and white kind, always a little bit sticky, having fused together at some point during the offs. You extract a few along with a waxy chocolate Santa, whose facial features have melted into abstract art. Tucked between them are walnuts, actual nuts, the kind that require a medieval torture device, a nutcracker, to access, ensuring the children of the 1950s started the day with a healthy respect for both dentistry and adversity. And then the orange, the great orange mystery. Every year it appears quietly smuggled into the bottom of your stocking, as if citrus is some kind of rare and precious gemstone. Maybe it's a relic from a piece. Depression, when getting a single orange was the height of luxury. Maybe it's a subtle message from your mother about vitamin C. Either way, you know deep down that you're never actually going to eat it. You'll roll around the kitchen counter for a week until someone suggests using it in Jell-O salad, and then it will quietly vanish. There are always wild cards in the mix. Perhaps you find a tiny plastic toy soldier, a yo-yo, or for reasons never fully explained, a single wooden clothespin. If your parents are feeling whimsical, maybe a box of crayons or a tiny puzzle, the kind that will consume the next 20 minutes and 2/3 of your patience before you lose a crucial piece under the couch. If you're really lucky, a silver dollar, gleaming and cold, and just heavy enough to make you feel like you're on the verge of financial independence. Spoiler: it will disappear into your college fund, or more likely the laundry machine. As you dig, you can't help but compare the experience to modern times. These days, stockings are like curated subscription boxes filled with artisanal chocolate and Bluetooth earbuds. But in the 1950s, it was a hodgepodge of simple pleasures and practical jokes. Part delight, part disappointment, all bundled up in a sock that may still smell faintly of mothballs. There's no social media pressure, no expectation for stocking stuffer hauls. Your only real competition is your siblings, and the unspoken battle over who got the bigger orange or whose candy cane survived unbroken. Once emptied, the stocking becomes a hat, a puppet, or in times of desperation, a projectile for sibling warfare. The walnuts are cracked and scattered. The candy is stashed for later, or consumed instantly in a sticky blur, and the orange is respectfully ignored. There's a fleeting pause. Everyone, adults included, caught in the shared ritual of finding joy in small, odd things. In the end, what sticks with you isn't the candy or even the orange. It's the sense of anticipation, the tactile thrill of digging through a sock in the half-light of Christmas morning, searching for treasure and finding, well, whatever your parents could find at Woolworth's. For all its simplicity, the 1950s stocking is a masterclass in finding magic amid the mundane, a gentle reminder that sometimes happiness is just a sticky candy cane and a citrusy let down away. And as you look around at the chaos, the laughter, and the faint scent of oranges and mothballs, you know you'll remember this feeling long after the last walnut is cracked. Or at least until next year, when that orange inevitably makes its annual comeback. Time for the main event. You rip through wrapping paper with a manic energy normally reserved for Olympic sports. There are cowboy hats, erector sets, and dolls with faces that will haunt your dreams. Sometimes you get socks. Sometimes you get educational gifts like a book about rocks. And sometimes, if your aunt has a wicked sense of humor, you get mittens she's clearly knitted while asleep. It's Christmas chaos 1950s style, a symphony of squeals, laughter, and the universal sound of Scotch tape being peeled off skin. Wrapping paper, emlaced with reindeer and atomic snowflakes, accumulates and drifts around your ankles, creating the perfect camouflage for anyone hoping to sneak an extra piece of ribbon candy before breakfast. The pile of gifts under the tree disappears faster than you can say Santa's union-mandated coffee break. Everyone's got their own style. Your little brother goes for brute force, shredding boxes like he's been possessed by a tornado with opposable thumbs. Grandma, meanwhile, delicately unwraps her presents, saving the paper for next year, which is a nice way of saying she has a growing pile of crumpled hope in her sock drawer. Your older sister is all about the slow reveal, pausing for dramatic effect, partly for the suspense, mostly because she's hoping someone will notice she didn't get her ears pierced like she begged for last summer. And then there's you, your elbow deep in cardboard, tissue, and the faintly toxic aroma of 1950s plastic. The first gift you open is a toy cowboy hat, blue felt, slightly too small, but you wear it proudly, already plotting to defend your territory. The couch from Outlaws your cousins later in the day. Next up, an erector set. The possibilities are endless as long as you don't lose the tiny screws in the shag carpet or drop a metal beam on your toe, which will inevitably happen before dinner. There's a brief pause as you pull out a box that's suspiciously heavy. You tear off the paper and stare. It's a book. Not just any book. A book about rocks, sedimentary, igneous, and metaphoric disappointment. You glance at your parents, who smile encouragingly and mumble something about learning is fun. You silently vow to use the book as a ram for your new toy car. Nearby, your cousin unwraps a doll. Not just any doll, but one of those mid-century wonders with glassy eyes that seem to follow you around the room, judging your life choices. The dress is pink, the hair is molded plastic, and the overall vibe is possessed by the ghost of a 19th century governess. It blinks, you blink back, you move on quickly. Of course, no haul is complete without the annual offering of socks. Socks in festive colors, socks with snowflakes, socks with reindeer, socks that could double as oven mitts. If you're really lucky, you get a threek. If you're less lucky, they're hand-knitted and resemble wool and sandpaper, lovingly crafted by a relative with more ambition than pattern-following skills. And then the pièce de resistance, the mittens knitted by Aunt Edna, who to be fair has terrible eyesight and a wild imagination. They're lumpy, multicolored, and not even the same size. One thumb hole, is missing entirely. The other large enough for a small badger. You slide your hands in and wonder if it's a joke or an avant-garde statement. Either way, you will definitely not be playing snowball fights in these unless you want frostbite and a reputation. But mixed in with the oddities are treasures, board games, a tin robot, a plastic harmonica, and for one lucky kid, a coveted Davy Crockett skin cap. The adults hand out their gifts with knowing looks, bracing for polite thank yous, and the annual ritual of pretending to love things you'll immediately re-gift or lose under the sofa. The room fills with the scent of rubber, cardboard, and faintly melting chocolate. Paper hats from crackers are donned at rakish angles. The floor is a sea of ribbons, tags, and shredded dreams. For a few shining minutes, there's nothing but pure, unfiltered childhood joy and the low hum of anticipation for what's next. And as you sit amid the debris, cowboy hat askew, hands itching inside your hobo mittens, you realize that the best gifts aren't the toys or even the candy. It's this moment of wild, ridiculous, family-fueled delight, a pile of weird presents, laughter, and the comforting knowledge that next year there'll be even more mittens. The gifts are opened, the mess is biblical, and now it's time for Dad to wage his annual battle with the tree. Pine needles everywhere, the stand refusing to cooperate, and at least one string of lights flickering ominously. It's a holiday tradition, mild electrocution and creative swearing, set to the soothing sounds of Perry Como. It begins as always with optimism. Dad surveys the post-gift devastation. A living room littered with tinsel cardboard and the ghosts of unwrapped socks. Takes a deep breath and decides today's the day he'll finally outsmart the tree ant. You can see the resolve in his eyes right before he trips over a Remotech control truck and nearly takes out a cousin. The smell of pine mixes with the lingering aroma of percolated coffee and the sharp tang of Dad's aftershave, which does nothing to mask the growing scent of tree sap and anxiety. The Christmas tree itself is a 1950s icon, 6 feet tall, symmetrical if you squint, and shedding needles faster than your uncle's hairline. It's adorned with glass ornaments and lead-based tinsel, because nothing says holiday cheer like a slight risk of heavy metal poisoning. The real danger, though, lurks below the metal stand. It is the final boss of Christmas, forged from industrial steel and resentment, featuring 3 stubborn screws and an uncanny ability to tilt no matter how many times you check it with a level. Dad crouches down armed with a butter knife, a wrench that fits nothing, and last year's instructions, which he'll ignore out of principle. He mutters to himself, trying to remember which way to tighten the screws so the tree doesn't lean at a 45 degrees angle. Your job is to hold. It's steady, which means wrapping your arms around sticky, needly branches while getting showered in a confetti of pine and old-school glitter. Each year, you're told, don't let go. And each year, the tree attempts a slow-motion escape toward the television. Lights are next. There's always one string that works perfectly until Dad so much as looks at it. The bulbs blink randomly. One goes out, and suddenly the rest join in, staging a labor strike. You are ordered to check every bulb, which involves removing and reinserting glass globes as your father grumbles about planned obsolescence, and they don't make them like they used to. Despite the fact that every string is from Woolworths and has been threatening to burst into flames since Truman left office. Somewhere in the chaos, someone plugs in an extension cord of questionable provenance. Instantly, the living room is filled with the sharp hop of static and the distinctive smell of hot ozone. Dad gets a mild shock, a classic feature of the 1950s Christmas experience, along with his best of snow and unguarded BB guns. For a moment, everyone pauses, unsure whether to laugh, call a doctor, or just pass around another tray of fudge. Meanwhile, Perry Como croons about peace on earth, while Dad, red-faced and pine-splattered, unleashes a stream of creative holiday language that would make the elves blush. You learn a lot about compound adjectives during this phase. At some point, Mom appears, surveys the carnage, and offers the traditional advice. Why don't you let me do it? Dad refuses, obviously, as the fate of Christmas depends on him asserting dominance over a piece of bent metal and a 6-foot spruce after what feels like hours, and in reality is only slightly less than the runtime of Ben-Hur. The tree is mostly upright, propped by a stack of Reader Digests, and maybe a strategically placed boot. The lights are half lit, half possessed, and the tinsel is now distributed equally between the tree and the living room carpet, where it will remain until Easter. There's a quiet sense of victory as Dad wipes sap from his hands and pronounces the job good enough. The family gathers to admire the tree, which is now just slightly askew, twinkling merrily, surrounded by gift-wrapped debris and the faint odor of something burning. In that moment, you realize that Christmas isn't about perfection. It's about the annual battle, the lopsided triumphs, and the feeling that against all odds, you've survived another round of Dad versus the tree. And as Perry Como fades and the dog sneaks a drink from the tree and water, you know the war will rage again next year, right on schedule. After the carnage of presents, it's breakfast. And by breakfast, we mean sugar, pancakes drowning in syrup, half a box of cereal, and maybe, just maybe, some fried Spam if your mother feels fancy. The orange juice is frozen concentrate, which means it tastes like hope and refrigerator. The kitchen, already sticky from a morning's excitement, is ground zero for chaos. Your mother is operating with the ruthless efficiency of a short-order cook, flipping pancakes, pouring cereal, and keeping a close eye on anything that might stick, burn, or combust. You and your siblings hover like vultures still wired from the illicit pre-dawn candy and the wild adrenaline rush of present unwrapping. The air is thick with the smell of melted butter, burnt toast, and whatever mysterious ingredient has fused itself permanently to the stovetop. Let's talk about the pancakes. These aren't the artisan sourdough-infused, gluten-free pancakes of the future. No, these are old-school white flour masterpieces. Sometimes lumpy, sometimes flat, but always served in generous stacks. The syrup comes from a plastic bottle shaped like a log cabin and pours like molten lava, turning your plate into a sticky, golden swamp. The butter is real and applied with an attitude. More is better. Arteries be damned. Occasionally, a chocolate chip or a stray walnut sneaks into the mix, but you eat around it. You're here for the sugar rush, not for health food. And then there's the cereal. Giant boxes of corn flakes and sugar-frosted puffs poured until the bowl is half full, and then topped off with milk so cold it actually steams in the kitchen air. The marshmallows in the cereal, if you're lucky, turn your milk pastel, creating the kind of breakfast that would horrify modern nutritionists and delight your inner child. You shovel it in with a speed that suggests you're being timed for a new Olympic event. Competitive eating junior division. But there's more. The wild card of the 1950s breakfast table. Spam fried until it's golden and sizzling, then layered onto toast, or simply eaten plain with a fork. If you're feeling truly daring, the adults call it protein. You call it the salty pink square. It's both exotic and suspicious, and it smells vaguely of the future. When all food is supposed to come in a can, no one is really sure if they like it, but everyone takes at least one polite bite. That's tradition, of course. The drink of choice is orange juice, not fresh squeezed. This is the space age, after all. It's frozen concentrate thawed in a plastic pitcher and mixed with water, then stirred until it's the color of traffic cones and tastes faintly like sadness and nostalgia. The flavor profile is equal parts sweet, sour, and did someone leave this in the back of the freezer last summer? It's poured into tiny glasses, sipped with a bravery reserved for astronauts and children desperate to wash down that last mouthful of Spam. Around the table, everyone is bundled in, pajamas, bedhead in full bloom, and sugar crashing hard. Parents try to sip coffee in peace while the kids bounce between seats, fighting over who got the biggest pancake or the least burnt slice of toast. There's a sense of camaraderie fueled by mutual exhaustion and the knowledge that soon everyone will be herded into itchy wool sweaters for family photos. It's loud, it's sticky, it's everything you imagine a 1950s Christmas breakfast to be. Not refined, not gourmet, but absolutely unforgettable. Someone spills syrup. Someone else sneezes powdered sugar across the table. The dog circles, hoping for a pancake to fall from the sky. It's a glorious, sugar-fueled mess. A brief, chaotic intermission before the next round of festivities. And as you sit back, stomach full of syrup and questionable canned meat, you can't help but marvel at the wonder of it all. This is Christmas, a sugar high, a family circus, and the simple, timeless joy of starting the day surrounded by the people and the pancakes you love. You survived breakfast, but now it's time for the most dangerous part of the morning, getting dressed. There's no such thing as casual Christmas in the 1950s. You're stuffed into a wool sweater that could double as sandpaper, slacks with a waistband like a boa constrictor, and patent leather shoes that squeak just loud enough to announce your discomfort to the whole neighborhood. Your mother, armed with a hairbrush and a suspicious glint in her eye, corrals the family with the determination of a sheepdog at a county fair. You're issued your formal wear, freshly ironed and infused with the faint scent of starch and mothballs. Because nothing says holiday cheer like a light, chemical haze. The wool sweater, lovingly hand-me-down from an older sibling or possibly a distant cousin, features a pattern so loud it can be seen from space. There's a snowflake motif, maybe a reindeer or two, and enough static electricity to power the train set for a week. Getting into this sweater is a process. First, you stick your head through the neck hole and immediately regret it. The collar is tight, scratchy, and apparently designed to remind you of your mortality. Your arms go in next, only to be assaulted by fibers sharp enough to exfoliate your skin down to the bone. By the time you're fully dressed, you're sweating, itchy, and convinced that at least 3 species of might now call your sleeves home. Next come the slacks. High-waisted, pleated, and unforgiving. They're held up by a belt that doubles as a medieval torture device and cut in a way that ensures maximum wedgie with every move. Your mother does a final tuck and tug, smoothing out wrinkles that are already springing back into place. There's a family tradition of saving pants that are just slightly too small, passed down in the hopes that one day someone will fit them properly. That day has not yet come. Socks are non-negotiable, usually a lurid shade of red or green. They add a festive touch and an extra layer of insulation between your toes and the inevitable pinching of patent leather shoes. These shoes, freshly shined, reflect the Christmas lights and the raw panic in your eyes. They are also lined with the spirit of every child who's ever been forced to break them in on Christmas morning. You clump across the linoleum, announcing your suffering with every step. Somewhere a dog howls in sympathy, the finishing touch. Hair. Your mother spits on a tissue because in the 1950s this is the universal solvent and attacks your cowlick like she's scrubbing a stubborn spot off the good china. Hair is parted, slicked, curled, and if necessary, subdued with a ribbon or an industrial quantity of pomade. You catch your reflection and wonder if this is what existential crisis looks like. Meanwhile, your siblings are suffering through the same indignities. Someone is already complaining about their tights. Someone else is hiding behind the couch, hoping to avoid the brush. Dad emerges from the bedroom, wearing a tie wide enough to double as a dinner napkin and a blazer that hasn't seen daylight since last Easter. He smells faintly of Old Spice and defeat. Once everyone is assembled, you shuffle into the living room for the photo. The photographer, usually Dad with his new Polaroid, positions everyone like chess pieces. He barks instructions about posture and smiles, fiddles with the camera, and tells everyone to say cheese, which you do through gritted teeth. Your sweater itches, your waistband cuts off circulation, and your shoes squeak in protest. The result is a picture that will hang on the fridge for months. A tableau of forced smiles, wild hair, and fashion choices that future generations will refuse to acknowledge. And as soon as the shutter clicks, there's a mad dash to change back into pajamas, leaving a trail of itchy wool and discarded dignity in your wake. Years later, you'll look back at these photos and laugh. But in the moment, all you can think is Christmas may come once a year, but sweater itch lasts forever. The camera is set up, everyone is arranged by height, and your father is barking orders like a general. It takes 20 minutes, 3 arguments, and a dire threat of no dessert before everyone's fake smiling for posterity. The result? One blurry Polaroid and several ruined relationships. It all begins with a simple announcement. Everyone into the living room. What follows is the slow, chaotic migration of children, parents, aunts, and any random pets foolish enough to linger nearby. The furniture is shoved aside with the subtlety of a demolition crew, and the Christmas tree is repositioned until only its least bald side is visible to the camera. Grandma is instructed to move just a smidge, which she interprets as rearrange the entire sofa and start a discussion about the merits of her angle. There's an established order to this ritual. Youngest in front, oldest in back, and anyone over 6 feet tall gets wedged awkwardly between a lamp and a fake poinsettia. Your mother spends 10 minutes smoothing cowlicks, arranging collars, and yanking hands out of pockets. Every sweater is scratched, every tie is crooked, and every child is grumbling about how the shoes are pinching or the waistband is cutting off circulation. Your father, meanwhile, is transforming into a cross between Annal Adams and a drill sergeant. He squints into the viewfinder of a camera the size of a toaster oven, issues commands with increasing volume, and delivers inspirational speeches about just one good shot for the love of Pete. The tripod, an artifact inherited from the Eisenhower administration, sits at a precarious angle, held steady with a soup can and a lot of hope. Someone blinks. Someone else blinks out of spite. The baby sneezes. Your little brother attempts a daring escape behind the couch, only to be retrieved and placed firmly in the front row, tears still streaking his cheeks. An argument breaks out over who gets to hold the family dog, who promptly solves the debate by escaping under the coffee table and refusing to come out for less than 3 pieces of bacon. At this point, patience begins to unravel. The room heats up as everyone bakes under wool sweaters and parental pressure. Threats are made, bargains are struck. Smile now, and you can open one more present later. And the stakes escalate with each passing minute. Your dad's smile has become a riches of determination. Your mom's eyes twitching. One cousin whispers something unspeakable about the Brussels sprouts planned for dinner, and the mood sour further. Finally, the moment arrives. The self-timer is set. Your dad sprints to the couch with surprising speed, and everyone freezes. The dog is a blur. Grandma blinks. The flash goes off with a sound like a minor explosion, temporarily blinding everyone and ensuring red eyes for the next 3 months. When the Polaroid is produced, the verdict is not good. The photo has captured exactly one person smiling, 3 midses, and a cloud of static charged tinsel floating through the frame. But there is no energy for a duver. The family photo, like fruitcake, isn't about perfection. It's about proof. Proof you were all here wearing your itchiest best, suffering together in the name of holiday tradition. As soon as the ordeal ends, everyone scatters. Kids back to their toys, dad to the garage for a restorative smoke, and mom to the kitchen to pour just a splash of cherry into her coffee. Later, that blurry, overexposed Polaroid will find its place of honor on the fridge or tucked into an album, a testament to the annual struggle. In the years ahead, you'll flip through these photos and remember the chaos, the laughter, the bickering, and just maybe the warm, ridiculous comfort of a family determined to smile together. Even if it takes threats of dessert deprivation and a flashbulb to make it happen, because that's the real Christmas spirit. Not the picture-perfect moment, but the story behind the snapshot, the squirming, the scratching, the stubborn refusal to give up on a family photo or on each other. Just as you think it's safe to relax, the doorbell rings. It's the neighbors, or maybe your great uncle, who always smells like menthol and bad decisions. Corollas swarm the porch, belting out deck the halls with alarming enthusiasm. Your dog howls in protest. Your grandmother harmonizes from the living room armchair. You peer through the frosty window and see the unmistakable outlines of puffy parkers and wool hats. Corollas, the unofficial alarm clock of the holiday season. There's always at least one kid in the group who clearly got dragged along against their will, mouthing the words and eyeing your porch light with the same expression you reserve for dental appointments. Meanwhile, Mrs. Harrow from 2 houses down is leading the charge, voice booming, smile fixed, holding a battered songbook, and the eternal optimism of someone who thinks strangers love spontaneous singing. Your mother scrambles for a plate of cookies to offer, a frantic grab for something, anything that looks homemade. Out come last night's gingerbread, a few sugar cookies, and at least one fudge square suspiciously shaped like Ohio. The good cookies are gone. Of course, they always vanish before the guests arrive, as if the house is run by dessert bandits. Someone digs up a dusty tin of ribbon candy, which by law every 1950s home possesses, but no living human has ever actually eaten. The carolers are joined by your neighbors who use the opportunity to pop in, coats still on, cheeks glowing red from the cold, and possibly from the just one more eggnog they enjoyed before venturing out. Small talk blooms in the hallway, full of weather reports, questions about your new television set, and gentle interrogations about whether your sister is seeing anyone special. You can't move 2 feet without being offered a peppermint or a long story about the year your neighbor's pipes froze. Meanwhile, your great uncle has slipped in, trailing a cloud of menthol, pipe smoke, and wild stories about the war, though which war is never entirely clear. He carries a brown paper bag with a bottle of holiday cheer inside, which he'll slip into his coffee when he thinks no one is watching. He's already made friends with the dog, who immediately abandons all loyalty for the promise of a handful of peanuts. The music never stops. Grandma, stationed in her throne-like armchair, is harmonizing with the carolers, adding a wobbling alto to every verse. Her version of Far La could summon geese from 1,000 miles away. The dog, not to be outdone, hauls along, transforming the entire scene into a sort of avant-garde holiday opera. The youngest cousin shakes a jingle bell with the energy of someone who has recently discovered both sugar and percussion. You do your best to be polite, caught between the urge to escape and the realization that there's nowhere to hide. The house is suddenly full of people. Some you know, some you think you've met, and at least one who may have just wandered in from the cold, attracted by the promise of figgy pudding and a heated living room. Your father stands near the entryway, one eye on the thermostat, silently calculating the cost of all this fresh air. It's chaos, but it's a familiar kind. Voices echo in the hall. Laughter bounces off the kitchen cabinets, and someone inevitably asks about your grades or your plans for the future. There's a comforting rhythm to it all. The overlapping carols, the slap of snowy boots on the mat, the endless parade of awkward hugs and candy passed hand to hand. The world shrinks to the size of your living room, bursting at the seams with tinsel. Off-key singing and the scent of cinnamon and melting snow as quickly as it began. The flurry of visitors EBS. The carolers depart off to the next door, trailing a chorus of "We wish you a Merry Christmas," and the memory of that time someone hit a high note so sharp it nearly shattered your Pyrex. Great uncle settles in for his annual nap. Grandma starts another verse, undeterred by the lack of audience. You collapse on the couch, grateful for the silence and for family, even if some of them come with pipe smoke and a questionable sense of pitch. And as you listen to the muffled sound of carolers drifting down the street, You realize Christmas isn't about perfect peace and quiet. Sometimes it's about letting the chaos in, passing around the ribbon candy, and singing out of tune together, whether you know the words or not. Let's talk home decor. In the 1950s, Christmas means tinsel and lots of it. The tree is shedding. There are candles dangerously close to curtains. There's a ceramic Santa with eyes that follow you around the room. You're not sure if it's festive or just a very slow-moving house fire. Take a slow look around. The living room is a glittering battlefield. Tinsel hangs from every branch and every flat surface, shimmering in the pale light like someone exploded a disco ball and called a charm. It falls in clumps, trails onto the carpet, and somehow ends up stuck to your socks, your pajamas, and weeks later your sandwich. No one knows where all the tinsel comes from. Every year, it multiplies like a sparkly invasive species. The tree is by now at least 1/3 bare, giving up needles at a rate that would worry any botanist. If you so much as glance at it, another pine needle drops off and kamikazes into your cocoa. The vacuum is already choking with last year's needles, which you're convinced are reproducing in the closet. Each ornament is heavy with meaning and glass. Everything is glass. Ornaments are hand-painted, breakable, and passed down with solemn warnings. If you break the hummingbird, Christmas is ruined. No pressure. But it's not just a tree that's festive. The whole room is a shrine to post-war prosperity and unchecked optimism. There are garlands over the mantel, stockings with names and glitter glue, and a crash scene that's missing at least one wise man and has a sheep that looks suspiciously like a dog from the nativity set next door. The table is covered with a plastic cloth printed in holly berries, already sticky from syrup, orange juice, and possibly the dog's tongue. Somewhere in every 1950s living room, there are real candles lit, flickering on the mantel, jammed into fake snow, or set into a wreath of pine cones and flammable intentions. Just keep an eye on those, your mom says, as if vigilance can prevent disaster. The flames bend and gutter inches from the curtains. Imported, dry clean only, and chosen specifically because they don't show the soot. Fire safety is still in its experimental phase, which mostly means try not to leave the room unattended for more than 3 minutes. And then lurking on a side table, you see him. Ceramic Santa, rosy cheeks, permanent grin, and eyes that track you from every angle. No matter where you sit, he's watching, judging, maybe plotting. It's supposed to be comforting, a touch of whimsy. But there's something about the way he's perched next to a bowl of ribbon candy, hard as geological specimens, that makes you question your life choices. If you leave the room for a minute, you're half convinced Santa will swap your presents for coal. Every electrical outlet is overloaded with a SN of cords and splitters. Lights blink erratically. Extension cords snake under throw rugs, tempting fate and your dad's patience. You're not entirely sure the house is up to code. The family motto might as well be, "It'll probably be fine." The faint odor of ozone and scorched dust clings in the air, occasionally masked by a spray of pine scent air freshener and whatever perfume Aunt Ruth decided was appropriate for a room full of children. Outside, a plastic reindeer is lashed to the roof, lit up by a spotlight that's definitely borrowed from the neighbor's garage. It sways in the wind like it's signaling for help. The windows are painted with fake snow and glass markers that never come off. No matter how much elbow grease you apply in June, somehow in the midst of this sparkling, mildly hazardous chaos, you feel safe. The warmth comes not from the radiator, which is clanking ominously, but from the glowing lights, the laughter, and the slightly scorched holiday spirit of a room decorated to within an inch of its life. It's not perfect, but it's yours. Tinsel, fire risks, ceramic Santa, and all. And if you make it through without burning down the house or breaking the hummingbird, you call that a Christmas miracle. Television is king, and you're glued to the screen watching the parade. Floats, marching bands, and a Santa Claus who looks suspiciously like your neighbor. Commercials for cigarettes play between segments. Someone brings out a cheese ball, You have never seen so much gelatin in your life. It's 1950s Christmas morning, and the living room transforms into a makeshift theater. The TV, a hulking piece of mahogany furniture with a screen smaller than most dinner plates, is now the family's altar. Everyone crowds around, jockeying for the best spot. Children sprawl on the floor. Adults claim the good chairs, and the dog somehow ends up directly in front of the set, blocking the lower half of every float with his tail. The screen flickers to life, broadcasting in glorious black and white. Unless you're one of those cutting-edge families with a color TV, in which case you spend half the parade fiddling with the knobs, while everyone argues about whether green looks too blue or if Santa's beard is supposed to be that shade of yellow. Still, it doesn't matter. The magic is real. Even if the only thing in focus is the weatherman's hat, the parade itself is a spectacle. Marching bands from faraway states form precision lines, blasting jingle bells with the kind of enthusiasm that comes from weeks of rehearsal and at least one poorly timed tuber accident. The floats are works of questionable engineering, paper-me castles, cardboard trains, and snowmen whose heads wobble dangerously in the breeze. Kids on the screen wave and throw confetti, blissfully unaware that every home in America is quietly judging their mittens. And then comes the real excitement, Santa's arrival. As he waves from his sleigh, there's a ripple of recognition. Is that Mr. Peterson from 2 doors down? The beard looks familiar, the wave even more so. You make a mental note to inspect his boots at the next neighborhood barbecue. The family debates the mystery for the next 15 minutes, missing most of the majorette routine and at least 2 baton drops between parade segments. The commercials are a window into a world both alien and bizarrely familiar. There are jingles for soap flakes and electric razors, a smiling couple lighting up doctor-recommended cigarettes by the fireplace, and children singing about the joys of breakfast cereal that will almost certainly glue your teeth together. One ad features a dancing turkey that for reasons lost to time wants you to buy a new car. It's marketing gone wild, and everyone in the room is a willing captive. Snacks arrive as they always do. A cheese ball rolled in suspiciously bright green herbs and studded with something that might be nuts is served on a plate that has survived 3 wars and 2 kitchen remodels. Crackers snap under the pressure of too much cheese. But the real showstopper is the gelatin. There are Jell-O salads, Jell-O rings, and at least 1 bowl of Jell-O cubes suspended in fruit cocktail and existential doubt. Someone claims it's a family recipe. No one asks for seconds. The adults trade commentary about floats. I remember when parades used to have real horses. The children fight for space, and someone inevitably bumps the TV antenna, sending the picture into a psychedelic spiral. There's a frantic readjustment, arms raised, tin foil twisted into strange origami until the image returns now slightly askew, but close enough for government work. As the parade winds down, the mood shifts from raucous excitement to sleepy satisfaction. The younger kids are curled up, sticky with Jell-O, while the adults plot how to sneak away for a nap before the next round of festivities. The living room, once full of anticipation, settles into a lull, TV still humming, cheese ball reduced to a smear, and parade floats marching on somewhere out in the snowy distance. And as you watch the final wave from Santa, still not convinced it isn't Mr. Peterson, you realize that Christmas magic isn't just about what's on the screen. It's about the laughter, the snacks, the shared suspicion about gelatin, and the way even the most ordinary parade becomes extraordinary when you watch it together. Because in the end, it's not the floats or the commercials or even the mystery Santa. It's the company, the cheese ball, and the memory of one more perfect blurry parade. It's time for that long-distance phone call to relatives who live inexplicably in Ohio. The connection crackles. Everyone yells into the receiver at once. The call costs roughly a week's salary and results in exactly 3 minutes of conversation, most of which is spent asking, "Can you hear me now?" This, too, is a sacred ritual of the 1950s holiday season. The long-distance phone call, a marvel of modern technology, and a test of family patience. It always begins the same way. Your mother eyeing the clock, biting her lip, waiting for the exact moment when the rates are rumored to drop, and your father announcing, "All right, let's keep this short," as if anyone has ever succeeded at that. The living room hushes with anticipation as the phone. An avocado green rotary monster weighing approximately the same as your average turkey sits center stage on the hall table ready for its annual moment in spotlight. The dialing alone is an event. Your mother consults her address book packed with phone numbers carefully written and rewritten over the years, most starting with mysterious letter prefixes like Kundike 5 to 3892. You slowly spin the dial, each number clicking forward with a sense of irreversible commitment and mounting financial dread. Heaven help you if you misdial and have to start over. When the call finally goes through, it's chaos. Static crackles on the line. Your aunt's voice arrives slightly out of sync, sounding like she's calling from deep space rather than the Buckeye State. Everyone instinctively starts yelling, as though the louder you speak, the further your words will travel through the phone wires and over the Appalachian Mountains. "Merry Christmas," shouts your mother, then passes the receiver to your father, who tries to be dignified, but immediately devolves into shouting about the weather and asking if the snow's as bad in Ohio as it is here. The phone makes its rounds. Each person gets approximately 15 seconds to speak, and every conversation starts with, "Can you hear me now?" "No." "What about now?" Followed by louder sides to the room. "I don't think they can hear me." "Tell her we say hello." "No, I can't hear them." "Just tell her we love her." The youngest children are hoisted up to say something cute, but the only words they manage are, "Hi, and I want more cookies." Grandma shouts in the background, sure that her voice will carry if she just projects hard enough. Occasionally, you get an accidental conference call. The line is patchy, and your voice echoes back at you in a way that would make NASA jealous. There's a lot of talking over each other, punctuated by extended silences where both ends assume the other is speaking. Someone always forgets who they're supposed to be talking to. So, you end up saying, "Merry Christmas" to your second cousin's neighbor's mailman. The clock is ticking. Dad stands behind whoever is holding the phone, making slicing motions across his neck, whispering, "Wrap it up." The bill as if the phone company is outside in a van with binoculars. You hear snatches of news, someone's new job, the latest family scandal, the mystery illness that's just a little cough, nothing to worry about. It's small talk shouted at long distance, with every word worth its weight in gold. Each minute feels like you're burning through your piggy bank in real time. As abruptly as it began, the call ends with a final round of "Merry Christmas" and "Love to everyone." The phone clicks down, and everyone exhales as if you've just completed a lunar landing. Someone makes a joke about selling a kidney to pay Marbell. The living room buzzes with the aftermath, a strange blend of pride, nostalgia, and a little relief that you won't have to repeat the performance until Easter. And for just a moment, the distance between you and your far-flung family feels smaller. All that shouting, static, and confusion is in its own way a reminder. No matter how far apart you are, Christmas finds a way to pull everyone into the same tangled, noisy conversation. If only for 3 expensive minutes. The kitchen becomes a war zone. Your mother is orchestrating the meal like a 4-star general. There's ham in the oven, Jell-O, molds multiplying on the counter, and at least one argument over whether the yam should have marshmallows on top. The air is thick with the scent of roasting meat and familial tension. If you listen closely, you'll hear the frantic symphony of Christmas prep, the metallic clatter of pans, the choked rattle of the electric mixer, and your mother's voice ricocheting off the Formica countertops. She's running on 3 hours of sleep, coffee, and the force of sheer determination. Her apron is already stained, her hair pulled back in a style best described as culinary combat mode. Every burner is occupied. The stovetop looks like a chemistry experiment gone rogue. Saucepans bubbling, gravy thickening, potatoes threatening to boil over. And then there's the gel dash. Multiple Jell-O molds and festive shades of green and red wobble on the countertop. Each one is packed with ingredients that defy logic. Canned pineapple, miniature marshmallows, shredded carrots, maybe even a rogue olive or two. Why? Because in the 1950s, if it could be suspended in gelatin, it was legally required to appear at the holiday table. Some of the molds are shaped like wreaths, others like stars, and at least one unfortunate blob that looks like the ghost of Christmas regret. In the midst of this, your father is sent on endless missions. We need more ice. The cranberry sauce. Check the ham. He weaves between relatives and casserole dishes, clutching a carving fork like it's a bayonet. Every now and then, he offers advice. Why don't you baste it again? Which is met with a glare that sends him back to the living room, where he'll supervise the children and hide from the yams. Yams are controversial. Every family has a passionate stance with marshmallows or without. The debate escalates quickly. Cousins are consulted. Alliances are formed. And at least one aunt threatens to leave the table if there aren't enough crispy edges. The argument ends not with compromise, but with the creation of two separate dishes just to keep the peace and to maximize the chances of leftovers. Children hover at the kitchen's edge, drawn by the promise of sneaking a roll or a spoonful of candied pecans. Go set the table is the universal command. And suddenly you're balancing stacks of mismatched plates, trying not to drop the good china, which is reserved for holidays and occasionally high-stakes negotiations. Silverware is hastily polished. Glasses are checked for lipstick stains, but someone always ends up with a cup that smells faintly of last summer's root beer float. In between, relatives drift in, offering helpful advice. Uncle Bob wants to know why you don't just use the pressure cooker. Grandma remembers when all you needed for Christmas dinner was a goose, a potato, and a positive attitude. Your mother grits her teeth and keeps stirring, sure that if she stops moving for even a second, the whole meal and possibly the entire family will fall apart. The aroma builds: brown sugar, cloves, sizzling fat, and something faintly scorched. Don't ask. The kitchen windows fog up. Someone opens a door, letting in a blast of cold air, and at least one neighbor who claims they just happen to be walking by. It's crowded. It's loud. And the only thing keeping everything on schedule is the sacred trust between your mother and her kitchen timer. Eventually, as chaos gives way to the steady march toward dinner, you realize this is the heart of the holiday. The flurry, the shouting, the casserole triage, and the Jell-O negotiations. It's not about the perfect meal. It's about everyone in all their ridiculous hungry glory, showing up and making it work. And if the yams burn and a Jell-O mold collapses, so what? You'll all laugh, eat too much, and declare it the best Christmas ever until next year's debate over marshmallows begins again. Every year, someone underestimates the turkey. It's either still frozen at noon or dry enough to be used as construction material. The electric carving knife makes its annual appearance, and everyone pretends they're not worried about salmonella. The bird purchased weeks ago and carefully thawed in the fridge, meaning forgotten in the meat drawer until the night before, is the main event and the primary source of anxiety. The entire day revolves around its fate. Your mother consults her recipe cards and the wisdom of good housekeeping, convinced this will be the year everything goes according to plan. The turkey, on the other hand, has different ideas. It starts with hope. You wake up to the faint scent of roasting poultry, and for a fleeting moment, it seems like things are under control. But by mid-morning, reality sets in. The oven thermometer reads lukewarm at best. The roasting pan, vintage, heavy, slightly warped, refuses to sit flat on the rack, tilting the turkey at a jaunty, rebellious angle. This ensures one drumstick will emerge a golden brown marvel, while the other remains pale and faintly shivering. By noon, The family hovers in the kitchen, making casual inquiries about when lunch will be ready. Dad suggests carving the turkey just to check. Your mother, brandishing a baster like a weapon, defends her territory and swears it just needs another 20 minutes. Everyone nods, pretending not to notice the turkey key's icy core or the fact that its wings are now approaching charcoal sculpture territory. Tension rises. The electric carving knife is unearthed from its tomb at the back of the cabinet. This is a device that promises surgical precision and delivers the sound of a dentist's drill combined with the chaos of a hedge trimmer. Your uncle insists on giving a demonstration, nearly taking out a chunk of the form countertop. The dog, sensing an opportunity, stations himself beneath the table, eyes locked on the floor for any casualties of the carving attempt. If the turkey is still frozen, the adults go into crisis mode. Methods for fast thawing are discussed, most of which sound like urban legends. Run it under hot water. Wrap it in towels. Take it outside and let the neighbor's dog have a go. Someone brings out the hairdryer. Someone else suggests slicing the turkey into cutlets and pretending it was intentional. You suspect deep down that next year's meal will feature ham. But sometimes the opposite happens. Instead of undercooked, the turkey is so dry it crumbles at the touch of a fork. The breast resembles pressed sawdust, and the stuffing has fused into a singular, inedible mass. No amount of gravy can save it, but that doesn't stop anyone from trying. The family lines up, plates in hand, practicing their polite expressions for the moment when the first bite threatens to dissolve into dust mid-chew. It's very hearty, someone offers. Really sticks to your ribs, says another. The dog, having sampled a dropped morsel, quietly retreats to his bed, reconsidering his loyalty. Yet despite it all, no one truly complains. Christmas dinner is less about the perfect turkey and more about the shared ritual of overcoming disaster with good humor and an abundance of side dishes. There's always a casserole, a mountain of mashed potatoes, and several Jell-O salads waiting in the wings, ready to pick up the slack. In the end, the turkey, overcooked, undercooked, or somewhere in between, is carved and served with reverence, as if the act itself is enough. And it is. The table groans under the weight of tradition and the lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, next year the turkey will surrender without a fight. For now, you raise your glass of frozen orange juice and offer a toast to perseverance, family, and the bird that refused to cooperate. Because it wouldn't be Christmas without a little chaos and a turkey that always keeps you guessing. There's a whole ritual to setting the table. Special china, actual silverware, and that one gravy boat no one remembers buying. Tablecloths are ironed, candles are lit, and someone is sent to fetch the folding chairs from the garage, only to discover a family of spiders has moved in. The process begins just after breakfast, as the aroma of pancakes gives way to the scent of hot starch and mild panic. The good china stored in a high cupboard since last year is unearthed with the solemnity of an archaeological dig. Plates are unwrapped from layers of yellowed newspaper, each one decorated with tiny flowers and gold trim, so fragile you're afraid to breathe on it. Your mother inspects every plate for chips, her expression somewhere between pride and existential dread. Out comes the silverware, real silver, heavy and slightly tarnished, stored in a felt-lined box that smells like old pennies and ancient secrets. There's a frantic polishing session involving a rag, a can of mysterious paste, and a lot of elbow grease. The forks shine, the spoons sparkle, and the knives could probably perform minor surgery if called upon. Someone inevitably asks why you can't just use the regular utensils. But tradition must be upheld. It's Christmas, your mother says, as if this explains everything. Then comes the tablecloth, which was ironed with military precision at dawn. It's spread across the table, transformed from a wrinkled relic into a shimmering field of white. You quickly cover it with a plastic protector because nothing says holiday cheer like the crinkle of vinyl with every movement. Napkins are folded, sometimes into elaborate fans, sometimes into ambiguous lumps that everyone agrees to call swans. Centerpieces appear: a low bowl of plastic holly berries, a trio of candles, and a paper snowflake made in 1948 by a cousin no one has seen since. Place settings are arranged with the kind of detail that would make an engineer proud. Salad forks to the left, dinner forks next to them, spoons for dessert, knives with the blades facing in, water glasses, and those tiny juice glasses you only ever use on holidays. You look at the table and realize you'll need a map to navigate all the utensils, like some kind of high-stakes starch-based board game. And then there's the gravy boat, a mysterious porcelain vessel with ornate handles and a spout, sitting proudly at the center of the action. No one remembers buying it, and yet it appears every Christmas as if summoned by the collective anxiety of undersourced potatoes. Its origins are unknown. It could be an heirloom or a garage sale find, but now it's a family tradition. Sometimes it's actually filled with gravy. Sometimes in the confusion, someone pours Jell-O salad in by mistake. The folding chairs are fetched from the garage. These are not chairs, but time machines, each one covered in a thick layer of dust, decorated with cobwebs, and inhabited by at least one ambitious spider. There's a ritualistic knocking and brushing off, a quick check for squeaks, and then the strategic placement at the kids' end of the table, where the padding is thinnest and the risk of collapse is highest. Candles are lit, each one perched precariously close to the plastic tablecloth, which leads to the family's annual game of how close can we get to disaster. Someone runs through the seating chart, rearranging place cards and debating who should sit next to Aunt Marge, who tends to tell stories that aren't technically suitable for dinner. The final step, stepping back to admire the scene. The table is a glittering, precarious masterpiece, gleaming with promise and a faint undertone of chaos. There's an unspoken agreement to ignore the slightly chipped plate, the one bent fork, and the gravy boat of mysterious origin. Because for one shining moment, the table looks perfect. Right before the first glass tips, the first four clatters, and Christmas dinner truly begins. Dinner is served. There's ham, turkey, canned cranberry sauce with a can line still visible, and a variety of side dishes that all jiggle suspiciously. Someone brings out a Jell-O salad that contains exactly one green olive and a lot of hope. The bread rolls are hard enough to use as projectiles. The family gathers around the gleaming table, a shining testament to American optimism and the miracle of processed food. The turkey, finally subdued and carved, rests beside the pink salty grandeur of the holiday ham, glazed, scored, and studded with exactly 8 cloves for reasons no one remembers. The centerpiece, however, is the cranberry sauce. Released from its can with a satisfying slurp, it stands upright on the plate, ridged like the rings of a sequoia and sliced into discs with the precision of a lunar landing. Now for the side dishes, which are plentiful and a little terrifying. There's the green bean casserole topped with a crust of fried onions, so crispy they could survive a nuclear blast. Mashed potatoes, butter pooling in the center, are served in a bowl that's chipped on one side and deemed lucky. Sweet potatoes buried under a blanket of toasted marshmallows hover between vegetable and dessert. A bubbling dish of creamed corn is passed around, ignored by most, cherished by the brave few who mistake it for something else. And then the aspic, the jewel of mid-century cuisine, a shimmering, quivering mold of clear gelatin encasing peas, carrots, maybe a shrimp, and if you're especially unlucky, a slice of boiled egg. It wobbles menacingly as it's served, daring you to take a piece. No one really likes it, but it's tradition. In the 1950s, tradition is eaten with a fork and a polite smile. Not to be outdone, the Jell-O salad makes its annual appearance. A bright green ring filled with canned fruit, mysterious marshmallows, shredded coconut, and inexplicably a single green olive floating in the center like a warning buoy. It's a dish that says, we had ambition, but not a recipe. You take a slice because your mother is watching, but you spend the rest of dinner trying to sneak it onto your sibling's plate. Bread rolls, the unspoken weapon of the feast, are passed with caution. Baked to the consistency of small river stones, they could easily double as self-defense tools if dinner turns ugly. Butter is served in a crystal dish, slightly melted with a single pine needle stuck in for that extra seasonal touch. The conversation flows as freely as the gravy. Adults debate the merits of ham versus turkey. Children plead for seconds on potatoes and plot trades involving their least favorite sides. There's always one uncle who heaps his plate with every single dish, only to declare that they just don't make food like they used to. Your great-aunt launches into her annual tale about the Christmas she survived on saltines and boiled turnips during the war. And everyone nods gravely, glancing at the aspic as if reconsidering their luck. There's laughter, too. Someone accidentally flips a spoonful of creamed corn across the table. The dog nabs a roll and vanishes under the tree. The gravy boat of mysterious origin makes several laps, spilling a trail that will be discovered months later when the table is finally moved for spring cleaning. For all its oddities, the meal is a masterpiece of holiday effort and mid-century stubbornness. It's not about gourmet cuisine or Instagram-worthy plating. It's about gathering together, embracing culinary chaos, and honoring traditions that have survived more out of habit than flavor. You eat, you laugh, you promise yourself you'll try the aspic next year. And as plates are cleared and Jell-O glistens under the harsh glow of the dining room lamp, you realize the 1950s Christmas feast is less a meal than a memory. A collection of flavors, faces, and questionable textures that you'll cherish or at least survive until next year. The kids are exiled to a separate table, which quickly devolves into chaos. Peas are flicked, milk is spilled, and someone attempts to trade their liver for a slice of pie. The adults pretend not to notice as long as nothing catches on fire. The children's table, a card table dressed in a faded vinyl tablecloth ringed with folding chairs of questionable stability, is always positioned at a safe distance from the main dining operation. Here, the rules are simple. Survival of the fastest, and may the odds be ever in your favor. The centerpiece is usually a plastic poinsettia and a sweating picture of milk surrounded by mismatched plates and cups borrowed from every corner of the kitchen. No glacier allowed. Everyone remembers the Christmas of '52, when Cousin Billy's experiment with a fork and the sugar bowl resulted in emergency upholstery cleaning. At first, there's an attempt at order. The oldest cousin tries to organize seats by age or height, as if democracy can flourish among children with mashed potatoes on their shirts. But anarchy soon reigns. The younger kids pile onto chairs, elbows out, fiercely guarding their plates from would-be food thieves and sibling saboteurs. Someone inevitably gets stuck with a wobbly chair that's one fidget away from collapse. It's tradition. Food arrives, a medley of things adults claim are good for you, and a few items that might actually be edible. Peas and carrots are pushed around the plate, forming defensive walls. Turkey is dissected and analyzed for the possibility of hidden bones, or worse, gross stuff. Someone bravely tastes the aspic, gags theatrically, and dares others to try it as well. A slice of ham vanishes under the table, sacrificed to the ever-present family dog who has learned patience, and puppy eyes are rewarded with a year's worth of sodium. Negotiations begin. Liverwurst is universally reviled, and the child unlucky enough to have it will try anything for a trade. Half a roll, a marshmallow, or in dire cases a week's worth of chores. The real currency, though, is dessert. The promise of pie or Christmas cookies dangles like a carrot in front of the table, fueling desperate deals and whispered alliances. If you give me your roll, I'll give you first dibs on the Jell-O, someone says, knowing full well that all deals are off as soon as the plates are cleared. Food fights are always a risk. It starts small, a single pea flicked across the table, a smudge of cranberry sauce wiped on a sleeve, but escalates with alarming speed. Spoons become catapults, and mashed potatoes fly with the elegance of a lunar launch. The adults, noses buried in their own conversations and possibly a second glass of cherry, remain blissfully ignorant, or perhaps choose to ignore the unfolding battle. As long as nothing shatters and the table stays upright, anything goes. Milk is spilled not once, but twice. The tablecloth, already sticky with syrup from breakfast, now boasts a growing constellation of stains, each one a badge of honor in the annals of family history. There's a brief truce as everyone hunts for napkins, then a return to the fray, forks, and laughter clattering in unison. The oldest cousin, self-appointed ambassador, occasionally ventures to the adult table to request more bread, only to be sent back with a warning about making do and stern look. You suspect they just want you to stay put and out of sight, like a rowdy band of pirates banished to their own ship. Yet, despite the chaos, the children's table is a world of its own, a place of sticky-fingered camaraderie, wild imagination, and the simple joy of being a little out of control. No one cares if you use your fork or your hands, if you eat your peas or feed them to the dog. Here, the only rule is to have fun and avoid major injuries. And as pie finally arrives and the last pea rolls off the table, you know this is the real heart of Christmas. Laughter, mischief, and the knowledge that the messiest memories are the ones you'll cherish most. After dinner, it's time for crackers. Those paper tubes filled with tiny toys, paper hats, and jokes so bad they could be used in international negotiations. Everyone is forced to wear a hat. The games begin. Someone tries to teach Grandma how to play charades. It does not end well. The table is cleared, plates are stacked in precarious towers, and everyone's stomach is groaning under the weight of ham, potatoes, and ambition. But the evening isn't over. It's just shifting gears. In the center of the table is a gleaming heap of Christmas crackers, each one decorated with holly or garish foil, their twisted ends beckoning to be yanked apart. The youngest children eye them like unexploded ordnance, knowing full well that at some point there will be a bang loud enough to send the dog under the couch. The ritual is simple and chaotic. You cross your arms. Everyone grabs a cracker in each hand, and on the count of 3, there's a round of pulling, popping, and shrieking. Paper hats spring forth, crumpled multicolored crowns that immediately fall down over your ears, or if you're unlucky, rip in half before you even get a photo. You have to wear it, insists your mother. And so the family sits begged like a party of medieval jesters. Tiny toys spill out onto the table. A plastic frog, a spinning top, a doll so small it could be inhaled by a strong sneeze. There's always one item that becomes the subject of instant fascination in trade negotiations. The coveted metal puzzle, the magic trick that doesn't work, or the miniature tape measure within seconds. These prizes are swapped, dropped, or lost in the folds of the tablecloth only to resurface in July, jammed behind the radiator. And then there are the jokes. Each cracker comes with a slip of paper, its contents painstakingly engineered to elicit groans and existential doubt. Why was the turkey at the Christmas party so proud? Because it was stuffed. Laughter groans, and at least one dramatic sigh ripple around the table. Someone claims that was worse than last year. Someone else immediately tries to top it with a knock-knock joke. If you're very lucky, Grandpa will launch into a riddle that takes so long to set up. The dog falls asleep before the punchline. With the hats donned and the jokes endured, it's time for games. Charades is the classic, and tonight it's Grandma's turn. She draws a card, peers at it through her glasses, and proceeds to act out Gone with the Wind by spinning in a circle, waving her arms, and possibly unintentionally flinging a dinner roll into the next room. No one guesses correctly, but everyone laughs until they cry. And that apparently is the point. Next comes a round of Who Am I, where everyone sticks the name of a famous person on their forehead and tries to guess their new identity. This quickly devolves into hints so vague they could double as ancient proverbs. "You're known for your hair," shouts your cousin, Elvis. "No, Grandma, it's Abraham Lincoln." The confusion grows, the hints get wilder, and the dog is finally offered a turn when everyone runs out of ideas. As the games wind down, the hats wilt, and the little toys disappear into pockets. The room is filled with a warmth that only comes from collective silliness. For a few glorious moments, nobody is worrying about dishes or arguing about politics. Instead, you're all united by the ancient holiday tradition of making fools of yourselves in paper crowns. You'll remember the food and the gifts. But these moments, the laughter, the jokes, the way everyone played along even when they had no idea what was going on, these are the real treasures of the night. The hats may be flimsy, the toys forgettable, and the jokes groan-worthy, but the memories, just like grandma charades, will last a lifetime. And as you pull the last cracker and read one more terrible joke, you realize that sometimes a silly hat and a bad pun are all it takes to make the season bright. It's not Christmas without fruit cake. It appears suddenly like a warning from the past, heavy, dense, and capable of surviving a nuclear blast. It's sliced, sampled, and quietly hidden under napkins by those with any sense of self-preservation. Fruitcake arrives without announcement. No one ever claims to have baked it, purchased it, or even seen it until it's already been sliced. Some say it's passed from family to family, year after year, in a sacred, slightly sticky relay. Others believe it's a sort of holiday poltergeist materializing in kitchens across America as a reminder of ancestral perseverance and bad culinary decisions. It sits in the center of the table, gleaming with a lacquer of mystery and enough candied fruit to supply an entire kindergarten's worth of art projects. The loaf is the color of ancient mahogany, studded with bits of neon green and red, allegedly cherries, but more likely the result of a chemical process that's banned in 23 states. Every slice reveals a geological cross-section of nuts, raisins, and unidentifiable globs that look like they belong in a museum more than on a plate. The slicing itself is ceremonial. Someone produces a serrated knife, usually reserved for minor home renovations. The blade crunches through the crust and sinks into a texture best described as architectural. Fruit cake does not crumble. It resists. Each piece is carefully pried loose and deposited onto a saucer where it sits quietly sweating in the warm glow of holiday lighting. Polite guests accept a slice with forced enthusiasm, weighing it in their hands as if considering its ballistic potential. There's a lot of nibbling around the edges, a good deal of strategic crumbling, and a flurry of excuses. "I'm saving room for pie. I'm allergic to walnuts." Or the classic, "Oh, I'll just wrap mine up for later." Inevitably, napkins are pressed into service as emergency disposal devices. The family dog, usually eager for scraps, gives the fruitcake a sniff and decides to pass. Every family has a fruitcake legend. There's the story of the year Grandpa used it as a doorstop, the time it was regifted 6 times in one afternoon, or the rumor that a slice is still somewhere in the basement, fossilized and waiting to be discovered by future archaeologists. If you believe the law, fruitcakes have been known to survive floods, fires, and one memorable holiday snowball fight. The adults pretend it's a delicacy, using words like robust and traditional. They claim the flavor improves with age, which is another way of saying it already tastes like 1947. Aunt Marjorie insists it's delicious toasted with a problem pat of butter. Though no one has ever witnessed this in the wild, Uncle Bob on his 3rd glass of punch swears by his secret ingredient and issues dire warnings against anyone who tries to uncover it. Yet in a strange way, the fruit cake is an essential part of the holiday. It's a unifier, a shared experience of polite horror, whispered jokes, and communal avoidance. Children dare each other to take a bite. Teens photograph it for posterity. Grandparents defend it, as a symbol of hard times and harder teeth. When the dessert table is finally cleared, the fruit cake remains mostly intact, save for a few experimental nibbles and one brave soul who actually enjoys it and is regarded with awe and suspicion for the rest of the night. The leftover slices are wrapped in enough foil to block radio signals and tucked into the fridge where they will remain until mid-January, when someone rediscovers them and the whole cycle begins again. And as you look at the lone fruit cake, heavy, mysterious, and somehow eternal, you realize that Christmas wouldn't be the same without it. Some traditions you savor, others you simply survive. The fruit cake, as always, is both. Time for more presents, mostly from distant relatives who have no idea what you actually like. You receive a book about rocks, a pair of mittens 2 sizes too small, and a mysterious object that may or may not be a kitchen utensil. Smiles are forced, thank yous are mumbled, and everyone mentally updates their Christmas card list. The family gathers for the post-dinner gift exchange, bellies full, and expectations appropriately lowered. The tree stands sentinel over a new batch of packages, their wrapping less elaborate than the morning's haul. This is a different kind of unwrapping. The ritual of thoughtful gifts from relatives you see exactly once a year, and who based on their selections seem convinced you're a 19th century coal miner or a budding geologist with a fetish for hand-knit accessories. Aunt Clarara's gifts always set the tone. You open her box to discover once again an illustrated compendium of North American igneous rock formations. Last year was fun with lichens. You smile gamely and practice your new catchphrase. Wow, this will look great on my shelf while trying to remember if igneous is the exciting kind of rock or the one that sits quietly in the garden until the end of time. Next up, mittens. Always mittens. They are bright, woolly, and at least 2 sizes too small. The sort of mittens that encourage you to consider life as a fingerless wonder. They'll stretch, your mother whispers, as you attempt to force your hand in, dislocating your thumb and praying for spring. You look at the tag, handmade with love, Aunt Edna, and try to recall if love is supposed to itch or cut off circulation entirely. And then there's the mystery gift. Every family has at least one. A heavy, ambiguous object, possibly intended for the kitchen, possibly a prop from a mid-century science fiction movie. This year, it's a plastic contraption with gears and a funnel. The note says, "For your hobbies," which is both vague and vaguely threatening. Your father studies it from across the room, claims he saw one in the hardware store, and promptly drops it in the future garage sale pile. All around, similar exchanges are unfolding. Cousin Billy unwraps a puzzle that's missing half the pieces. Your sister receives an educational diary complete with a tiny lock and a key that doesn't fit. Someone gets a festive tie, so garish it could stop traffic. Grandma receives a scented candle and a fragrance that can only be described as nostalgic mothball. The adults ooh and are with a kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for new kitchen appliances and fire insurance. The air is thick with polite thank yous and quiet recalibration. Each gift inspires a round of diplomatic small talk. How creative. So practical. Just what I needed. The art of polite disappointment is mastered in real time. Faces frozen in RTUS grins as they wonder silently if next year will bring socks or soap or something even more inscrutable. Of course, there are standouts. Every once in a while, a gift hits the mark. A book you actually want, a toy you've begged for since October, or if you're lucky, a crisp $5 bill tucked into a holiday card with a cartoon Santa on the front. These treasures are cherished, then hidden from siblings who've already developed a sixth sense for sniffing out unguarded loot. Meanwhile, the Christmas card list gets quietly rearranged. Distant cousins who sent slippers 2 sizes too big drop several spots. Uncle Bob, who remembered your love of model trains, gets a bump. And whoever sent the annual fruitcake, well, they move directly to the optional correspondence column right next to dentist and car dealership as the last package is unwrapped and the obligatory group photo is taken. Everyone clutching their mismatched gifts and smiling bravely. You realize this is just another chapter in the ongoing epic of family togetherness. The mittens may be tiny, the rocks bewildering, and the mystery object destined for basement exile. But in the end, it's the act of giving and the stories that follow that make the holiday shine. Because Christmas isn't about the perfect gift. It's about laughter, tradition, and the annual reminder that sometimes the best thing you can unwrap is a good story to tell next year. The sun sets, and the board games come out. Monopoly turns into a blood sport. Scrabble sparks debates about whether Yule is a word, and at least one game piece is lost forever in the shag carpet. Sibling alliances form and dissolve with alarming speed. This is the true crucible of Christmas night. The living room, previously a land of gift wrap and polite small talk, transforms into a battleground. Someone drags the games out of the hall closet, a dusty stack that smells faintly of mothballs, rubber bands, and unresolved childhood trauma. There's a ritual shaking of boxes to confirm all the pieces are present, but it's more an act of hope than an effective inventory. If you get a full Monopoly set and a functioning dice, consider it a Christmas miracle. Monopoly is the game of choice to start, mostly because it promises an epic saga of betrayal and financial ruin. Your dad claims to play just for fun, and then proceeds to dominate the board with ruthless efficiency, snapping up Boardwalk and Park Place while the rest of you squabble over the cheap properties and hope not to land in jail. The battles over who gets to be the thimble or the race car are more intense than the opening of presents. Your little brother, as usual, ends up with the iron and spends the rest of the night muttering about the unfairness of life. The game progresses at a glacial pace. Paper money is counted and recounted and deals are struck under the table with the secrecy of Cold War diplomats. At some point, someone inevitably borrows from the bank or misplaces a $5 bill, leading to a small, quiet inquisition. Hotels rise, fortunes fall, and the only constant is the growing pile of properties in front of your father and the sinking realization that the rest of you are playing for second place. When Monopoly finally devolves into accusations of cheating and dramatic gestures involving the board, someone suggests Scrabble. This is supposed to be a calming alternative, but it quickly becomes an academic death match. Words like Yule and eggnog are hotly debated. Dictionaries are consulted, and every triple word score triggers a suspicious audit. Your older sister tries to spell quixotic with a questionable arrangement of tiles and an even more questionable explanation. Grandma, meanwhile, racks up points with words no one else has ever heard, claiming they were standard in 1923. Game pieces begin to disappear, sucked into the depths of the shag carpet that covers the living room floor like a green, synthetic jungle. The dog, sensing an opportunity, sneaks a porn or two for later snacking. You know that years from now archaeologists will be excavating these rooms and wondering about the cultural significance of a single blue parchery piece and half a deck of old-maid cards. Sibling alliances shift with dizzying speed. One minute you're partnering up for a risky Monopoly deal, the next you're sabotaging each other's Scrabble words out of pure joyous spite. The older cousins make a temporary peace to crush the younger kids in Clue, and then immediately resume hostilities during Go Fish. Betrayals are swift, grudges are long, and all's fair in love and board games. The adults, having seen it all before, retire to the kitchen with pie and coffee, leaving the next generation to hash out their differences in cardboard and plastic. The volume rises as rules are argued. Victories are celebrated and dramatic losses are mourned with the solemnity of a Shakespearean tragedy. By the end of the night, the living room looks like the aftermath of a diplomatic summit gone sideways. Game boards askew, cards scattered, and the faint but distinct possibility that Monopoly will be banned until at least next Easter. But as everyone collapses onto the couch, laughing and mock arguing about who really won, you realize these are the moments that last. The rivalries, the alliances, and the games that stretch late into the night. echoing through every Christmas to come. Because in the grand tradition of family holidays, it's not about who wins or loses. It's about surviving the night with your dignity mostly intact. And if you're lucky, finding the missing game piece before next year. It's not a 1950s Christmas until Bob has a little too much punch and starts telling the story about the time he met Frank Sinatra at the bowling alley. The kids listen wide-eyed. The adults brace for disaster. At some point, someone has to confiscate the eggnog. The signs are all there. Uncle Bob's tie has been loosened. His cheeks are glowing, and he's standing just a little too close to the tree. He's topped off his glass of punch, which is mostly bourbon and a hint of nutmeg, more times than anyone's been counting. The ice cubes in his glass rattle with each enthusiastic hand gesture, and his patented, "Let me tell you something," voice gets louder as the night wears on. The storytelling begins innocently enough. He launches into the Sinatra tale again, a legendary encounter that grows in drama and celebrity each year. In the earliest versions, Bob just saw old blue eyes across a crowded lane. This Christmas, he's exchanging bowling tips with the chairman of the board while a mysterious woman in a mink coat watches from the snack bar. Details multiply like rumors at a church bake sale. The children gathered at his feet are spellbound. They have no idea who Frank Sinatra is, but they know a good story when they hear one. The idea of a grown-up meeting someone famous, even if it's only famous in New Jersey, is cause for awe. Bob draws them in, pausing for dramatic effect, glancing conspirator ally over his shoulder as if the FBI might bust down the door to hush up the tale. He embellishes the action with wild arm movements, sloshing punch dangerously close to Grandma's crocheted table runner. The adults, on the other hand, are watching the proceedings with the quiet dread of people who've seen the show before. Aunt Marge begins clearing glasses with a little too much energy, hoping to preemptively soak up any spilled secrets. Your mother hovers near the record player, ready to drown out Bob's more creative language with a sudden blast of Bing Crosby, if necessary. Dad just shakes his head and sighs, grateful it's Bob's turn to embarrass himself this year. As the story peaks, Bob describing Sinatra's firm handshake and voice like smooth caramel. The eggnog makes its final fateful appearance. Someone, usually a cousin with a sense of self-preservation, quietly slides the punch bowl out of reach, replacing it with a glass of ginger ale. Bob, undeterred, continues, now slipping seamlessly into a tale about the time he nearly made the bowling finals at his local league. If not for that crooked lane and the world's slipperiest shoes, the children pepper him with questions. Did Frank Sinatra really sign a bowling ball? Was he as tall as he looked on TV? Did he sing Jingle Bells while bowling a spare? Bob answers each with the earnest confidence of a man who has never let reality get in the way of a good story. By the end of the tale, Sinatra is not only his best friend, but also the godfather to 3 local dogs and the secret inventor of Christmas fudge. Every family has an Uncle Bob, and every Christmas needs one. The adults trade silent agreements that as long as the stories are only slightly embarrassing and no one starts arm wrestling by the fireplace, all will be well. After all, what's the holiday without a few family legends? A little creative exaggeration, and just enough mischief to make next year's gathering something to look forward to. As Bob's voice finally trails off, the kids scatter to the next adventure, clutching half-remembered details about celebrity encounters and bowling miracles. The adults breathe a collective sigh of relief, and someone quietly tucks the eggnog behind the cranberry sauce in the fridge. Until next time, and you realize as the night winds down that family stories, true, false, or somewhere in between, are the real keepsakes of Christmas. Long after the presents are forgotten, the fruitcake is repurposed as a doorstop and the last punch bowl is washed. Uncle Bob's legends will live on, getting just a little more magical with each retelling. After all that food, the entire family collapses into armchairs and couches. There's snoring, there's drooling, and there's the distinct possibility someone will sleep through until New Year's. The only thing moving is the dog, still hunting for dropped ham under the table. The transition from Christmas dinner to living room slumber happens with impressive speed. One moment the house is a flurry of forks and voices, and the next it's a museum of mid-century furniture occupied by relatives in various states of digestive surrender. The air is thick with the comforting smells of gravy and vanilla mingling with a distant whiff of pine and whatever cologne Uncle Bob bathed in before arriving. You survey the room. Aunt Marge has commandeered the best recliner, its faded floral pattern hidden beneath her shawl, and a quilt borrowed from the guest room. She is out cold, mouth open, glasses slipping down her nose, hands folded over her stomach as if guarding the memory of a second helping of yams. Her gentle snoring provides a rhythmic background to the quiet chaos like a malfunctioning metronome. Cousins are sprawled across couches, arms and legs tangled in a tangle of holiday pajamas, elbows sticking into each other like casualties of a particularly cozy battle. Someone has pulled their sweater over their face in an effort to block out both the light and the sound of Grandpa's historic whisk. Grandpa himself is in the corner armchair, a newspaper tinted over his chest, and a look of pure, undisturbed bliss that only comes after a year's worth of roast and a slice of pecan pie. The younger kids are the last to fall. At first, they stage a valiant resistance, fighting sleep with one more cookie, one more story, one more sneak under the tree. But the combined effects of sugar, excitement, and an all-carb dinner catch up to them in slow motion. One by one, they nod off in improbable positions, slumped over the ottoman, curled under the side table, or balanced precariously on the arm of the couch like very festive cats. The adults, too, succumb to the process recording, gravitational pull of soft cushions, and holiday fatigue. Conversations grow quieter, laughter softer, until only the occasional sigh or a muttered dream argument about monopoly rules breaks the silence. In one corner, someone is still clutching a half-empty mug of coffee, their pinky suspended mid-sip as sleep claims them with the determination of a tidal wave. Meanwhile, the family dog is on cleanup duty, nosing around the feet of chairs in hopes of unearthing a stray piece of ham. Or better yet, an entire dinner roll. He moves with the stealth of a canine ninja, pausing only to glance around and confirm that everyone is too far gone to notice his culinary crimes. Outside, the evening grows dark. Christmas lights blink sleepily on the porch, their reflection shimmering in the frosted windows. Inside the house is hushed except for the symphony of snores deep shallow and everything in between. It's the sound of contentment, of survival, of bodies at rest after a day spent celebration, chaos, and carbs. You wrap yourself in a blanket and let the warmth of the room and the gentle static of family dreams wash over you. For now, there is nothing to do and nowhere to be. No presents left to open, no dishes left to clear. Those are tomorrow's problem. Just the safe cocoon of soft furniture and the knowledge that for one perfect moment, everyone is exactly where they're meant to be. As you drift off, you realize this is the true holiday magic. Not in the gifts or the food, but in the simple peace of a room full of people together, dreaming in armchairs. And maybe, just maybe, if you nap long enough, you'll wake up in time for leftovers. Midnight approaches, the dishes are piled high, the tablecloth is stained, and the leftovers are packed in a Tupperware that will never be seen again. As the house quiets down, you wander through the dimly lit rooms, thinking about the day, half grateful, half exhausted, and already dreading the inevitable discovery of a forgotten toy behind the couch in July. The final act of Christmas is not heroic. It is quiet, deliberate, and more than a little sticky. The kitchen is a landscape of aftermath. Plates crusted with gravy, silverware soaking in cloudy water, and a casserole dish stubbornly fused with the remnants of sweet potatoes and ambition. Someone is running the faucet, hands plunged wrist deep in suds, their mind drifting somewhere between. Was that really the last roll? And can I just throw this pan away instead of scrubbing it? You stack dishes with the reflexes of a seasoned dishwasher, ignoring the gentle accusations of you missed a spot from across the counter. The table, once gleaming beneath the candlelight, now tells the story of every spill, every giggle, every round of seconds. The tablecloth, dotted with cranberry and butter, is evidence of a feast well fought, destined for a soak in the laundry room and a whispered apology to the washing machine. In the fridge, the leftovers begin their new lives as forgotten relics. Turkey, ham, 3 kinds of potatoes, and a rapidly congealing mountain of gravy are packed into mismatched containers. Tupperware, each lid, slightly warped, never matching the right base, forms a mosaic of hope and denial on every shelf. You suspect some of these leftovers will be unearthed during spring cleaning, their contents unidentifiable except by carbon dating. For now, they are tomorrow's sandwiches, tomorrow's snacks, tomorrow's good intentions. The house is unusually still. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the distant, persistent tick of the kitchen clock break the silence. You move through the living room, stepping around piles of gift wrap that escape the morning purge, sidestepping a lone slipper and a hardening chunk of fruit cake nobody remembers cutting. The lights on the tree blink lazily, half the bulbs still waging a quiet rebellion, casting strange shadows on the walls. As you wander, you pass sleeping relatives in various stages of recovery. Aunt Marge snoring lightly under her quilt. Cousins draped across sofas. A half-eaten plate of cookies abandoned on the end table. Even the dog has surrendered, curled up on a pile of coats, dreaming of ham and glory. You pause for a moment and let the hush settle around you. This is the time for reflection. When the noise of the day is finally replaced by gentle gratitude, you think of the laughter, the chaos, the endless games, and the annual fruitcake joke that still somehow lands. There's a warmth in knowing the day was far from perfect. Glitches in the meal, half-burned rolls, a turkey that staged a last-minute rebellion. But somehow that makes it better. The imperfections are what make these memories real. You find yourself picking up stray bits of tinsel and an army man wedged behind the radiator. Remnants of childhood and celebration. Every corner of the house holds a tiny piece of the day. A crumpled hat from a Christmas cracker. A forgotten mitten. A sticky spot where the dog found the last of the gravy. It's evidence of life. Lived loudly, messily, and together. As midnight finally ticks in, you take one last look at the scene. A tableau of dim lights, full bellies, and the soft, muffled breathing of family at rest. The work is done. The house is safe. Tomorrow will bring cold turkey, pie for breakfast, and if you're lucky, a slow, lazy morning in pajamas. You tuck yourself into bed, the echoes of Christmas laughter still humming in your ears, already half dreaming of next year. Because in the end, the mess, the leftovers, and the lost toys are the proof. Another Christmas survived, another chapter written, and a lifetime of memories tucked into every sleepy, quiet corner. It's not truly December until your mother breaks out the address book and a mountain of sparkly greeting cards. You're roped into helping, which mostly means licking envelopes and getting high on glue fumes. By car number 42, your handwriting has devolved into an unreadable scroll, and you're pretty sure you've just wished someone's dentist a Merry Chrysler. Somewhere, a pile of glitter is waiting to attack your carpet for the next 3 years. The Christmas card ritual is a sacred, slightly hazardous tradition. The dining room table is commandeered for the operation, stacked high with boxes of cards featuring everything from snow-blanketed churches to Santa in a convertible. Your mother, the general of this campaign, divides the cards by recipient. Family, neighbors, former neighbors, and people you haven't seen in a decade, but feel socially obligated to contact, lest you trigger a small-town Cold War. The address book itself is a work of art, dog-eared, filled with scratched-out phone numbers, ink-smudged margins, and cryptic notations like "Move to Cleveland" or "Stillo's pie dish." You flip through the pages, squinting at names you only recognize as the senders of last year's card that featured a photo of a baby, a poodle, and an inexplicable taxidermy squirrel. You're handed a pen and told to start with the easy names. The first few cards are masterpieces. Neat cursive heartfelt greetings, the perfect balance of warmest wishes, and hope to see you soon. By the 10th envelope, you've developed a callus. By the 20th, your handwriting is starting to look like Morse code in a windstorm. Somewhere in the 40s, you switch to block letters and hope no one notices. Envelope licking is a high-stakes game. The taste of glue is somewhere between regret and regret that's been left on a shelf since the Hoover administration. Your lips tingle. Your tongue goes numb. At some point, you start to wonder if you're building up a resistance or a mild allergy. The cards stack up, each envelope sealed with a little more desperation than the last. The glitter is the real enemy. It waits quietly in the seams of every envelope and the corners of every card. The slightest breeze, the gentlest tap, and your entire house sparkles with the festive, indestructible detritus of good intentions. You'll be picking it out of your scalp in March and from the dog's fur until next Christmas. As the pile shrinks, so does your will to be creative. Wishing you all the best, this season mutates into happy holidays and finally love us. There are moments of doubt. Did you already send a card to the Johnsons? Did you forget Aunt Ida? Is the guy who fixes the fence a first name or just an occupation? Your mother's response is always the same. Better send one just in case. The guilt creeps in too. Each card you receive, each signature from a distant cousin or a second-grade teacher becomes a small paper beacon of social pressure. You wonder if they'll notice you used the wrong cardstock or forgot the family photo. You wonder if it's obvious you wrote their card after the glue fumes hit their peak. At last, the stack is finished. The cards are bundled, addressed, and handed off to your father, who will drive them to the post office with the solemnity of a nuclear launch. The table is left scattered with pens, address labels, and the lingering aroma of minty glue. The carpet, now more glitter than fabric, twinkles in the fading light. You lean back, hands cramped, tongue tingling, and wonder if you'll ever feel your fingertips again. But there's a strange satisfaction in knowing the tradition continues. Cards will travel across town, across states, and end up propped on mantels, stuck on fridges, or wedged into stacks of incoming bills. And as you sweep up the last dusting of glitter, knowing it's a losing battle, you realize Christmas isn't just about the cards you send. It's about the small, ridiculous rituals that connect you to people you love, people you barely remember, and people you'll always send one more card just in case. The snow outside looks picturesque until your dad hands you a shovel and points toward the driveway. This isn't just a light dusting. It's an Arctic expedition, complete with a neighborhood busybody offering advice from their frosty porch. You're bundled up in so many layers, you can't bend your arms. But you're still expected to clear the sidewalk before the mailman slips and sues the entire block. It starts with the best intentions. Someone glances out the window and says, "What a beautiful morning." That's your cue to brace yourself for the coming ordeal. The house is warm and toasty, but the moment your boots hit the porch, you're greeted by a wall of cold. So sharp it could slice bread. Frost clings to every surface, and your breath puffs out in little clouds, mingling with the distant sound of a snow plow 2 streets over. Dressing for snow removal is a logistical operation. First come the long johns, then the wool socks, then the pants, sometimes 2 pairs, because hypothermia is a family tradition. Your mother swaddles you in sweaters, scarves, a parka that smells like mothballs, and mittens so thick you could survive on a glacier. As long as you don't actually have to pick anything up, you waddle out the door with the mobility of a department store mannequin. Your dad stands on the porch, king of the castle, wielding the world's oldest, heaviest snow shovel. It's made of solid metal, probably passed down from his own childhood, and it's seen more action than half the family cars. He hands it to you with a look of fatherly pride. This, finally, is your time to prove yourself. You grip the handle, which is as cold as a tax collector's heart, and mentally prepare for battle. The snow isn't fluffy. It's not movie snow. It's heavy, wet, and packed so tightly it could be used for modern fortifications. Your first scoop weighs approximately as much as a Christmas ham. You toss it aside and immediately get a blast of powdery snow in your face, courtesy of the wind and the universe's sense of humor. By the second, shovelful, your hat is askew, your mittens are full of ice, and your cheeks are red enough to land a role as a department store Santa. Meanwhile, the neighborhood busybody, Mrs. Jenkins, naturally appears on her porch, bundled in 10 layers, and sipping tea. She shouts helpful tips like "don't forget the steps" and "you missed a spot" as you attempt to avoid her gaze and the existential dread of shoveling the same patch of sidewalk 3 times. Progress is slow. Your siblings appear briefly to help, which means turning the shoveling into a snowball fight before retreating indoors, leaving you to face the elements alone. The dog bounds outside, tracks snow through your carefully cleared path, and then runs inside again because even the dog knows when to call it quits. Somewhere along the way, your dad decides to show you how it's done, takes the shovel, and makes the whole thing look effortless. He carves perfect lines through the snow, flipping each scoop aside with confidence of a man who spent decades in Midwestern winters. You nod impressed and secretly vow to move to Florida the moment you turn 18. The real reward comes at the end. As you chip away at the last chunk of ice, your mom calls from the porch. Hot chocolate waiting. Marshmallows bobbing like little life preservers. You stomp your boots, peel off the layers, and head inside to Thor, feeling a strange sense of accomplishment and mild frostbite. And as you look back at your crooked, slightly lumpy driveway, you realize this is Christmas, too. A lesson in perseverance, childhood labor laws, and the knowledge that in the 1950s you earned your cocoa the hard way. The snow may keep falling, but for tonight you've won, at least until it snows again, which judging by the forecast will be tomorrow. You're cast as a wise man, or maybe just child in back row. Your costume is made from a bathrobe, a cardboard crown, and a sense of growing dread. The sanctuary is packed. Baby Jesus is played by someone's squirming cousin. The angel's halo is crooked, and the only frankincense in sight is your aunt's perfume. Miraculously, the sheep behave better than the shepherds. Pageant night begins with a mad rush to the church basement, where a jumble of props, costumes, and parents in various stages of nervous breakdown wait for you. Bathrobes are assigned based on a highly scientific system of whatever fits, and someone hands you a sash that smells like mothballs and last year's hard candy. The cardboard crown crafted in Sunday school with a glue stick and dangerous optimism perches atop your head at a precarious angle. There's a box of tinsel halos, at least one of which is made from a bent coat hanger, and has claimed its last victim's hair. Backstage is organized chaos. Little Mary is threatening to quit unless she gets to hold the baby, while Joseph keeps wandering off to see if the cookie table has been restocked. The shepherds are dueling with their crooks. 2 angels are arguing about who gets to sing Silent Night. And the sheep, 3 toddlers in makeshift costumes of cotton balls glued to old undershirts, are eating a nativity star when no one is looking. You, as a wise man, practice your one line, wishing desperately for a script with fewer thirst sounds. As the pews fill up, the noise level rises. The congregation, bundled in wool coats, clutching hymnals, smiling with the tired hope that comes from decades of Christmas pageants, settles in. Someone's grandpa is adjusting his camcorder, a piece of technology the size of a microwave oven, aiming it squarely at the altar, and accidentally the organist's left shoe. The show begins. The pastor welcomes everyone, says a prayer, and gives the sort of reassuring introduction that says, "Whatever happens, we will survive." The curtain, actually a gold brocade tablecloth from the church's wedding set, is drawn aside, revealing the cast in all its homemade, jittery glory. The pageant unfolds at its own unique pace. The angels miss their cue and appear 3 scenes early. Joseph drops his staff. Mary retrieves it, and the baby Jesus, played by a live, wriggling infant, lets out a cry that shakes the stained glass. The shepherds, unbothered, decide to improvise a dance routine. Your cue arrives. You step forward, announce your gift. We bring you Mr. And pronounce it Mr. because phonics are for the truly brave. But nothing tops the sheep. The children, fuzzy with cotton and confusion, steal the show by actually sitting quietly in a corner and not eating the scenery. Unlike last year, the adults in the audience exchange relieved glances. The only real stage fright tonight is when the pastor's dog, pressed into service as a stand-in donkey, tries to escape up the aisle in search of the cookie table. Through it all, the sanctuary glows. Christmas lights reflected in polished wood, the scent of pine and candle wax hanging in the air. Parents dab, eyes with handkerchiefs, grandparents beam, and the choir director looks ready for a nap. When the pageant finally ends, applause erupts, half of the children and half in celebration that nothing caught fire. Cookies and punch await in the fellowship hall. Costumes are shed. Crowns and halos exchange for sugar cookies and cups of bright red punch. The parents snap photos to commemorate a night of chaos, courage, and costumes held together with pins and prayers. And as you look around, you realize the true miracle isn't just the story being told. It's that everyone played a part, however small. And no one will forget the year you pronounced myrrh like a sneeze. That's Christmas in the 1950s. A beautiful mess, a cast of dozens, and the sort of joyful memory that sticks around long after the tinsel is swept away. As the last of the Christmas lights flicker against the frosted window, and the smell of leftover ham lingers in the air, let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer resilience, inventiveness, and slightly unhinged optimism of the American family in the 1950s. Somehow between the itchy sweaters, the turkey that fought back, and the annual threat of electrocution by Christmas lights, you made it through the day. You navigated Jell-O salads that defied classification, relatives who redefined the meaning of personal space, and enough tinsel to disrupt the nation's radio signals. You survived the stampede of children at dawn, the war for control over the thermostat, and the annual family photo that will haunt your descendants for decades. You endured the holiday fruitcake, an object with a half-life of uranium, and you nodded politely as Uncle Bob told the story of Sinatra at least 3 times, each version less believable than the last. Maybe you even managed a genuine laugh over a paper crown or a board game that turned cutthroat before dessert. But as the chaos of the day fades into a gentle hush, there's a quiet strength in all of it. There's something oddly heroic about stringing up lights in a blizzard or pretending to enjoy marshmallow yams for the sake of family tradition. The holidays were never perfect, but they were real, messy, loud, a little itchy, and packed with the kind of memories that stick around long after the last pine needle is swept up. So tonight, as you tuck yourself in, surrounded by the modern miracle of central heating, clean sheets, and the comforting knowledge that no one expects you to eat fruitcake tomorrow, take a moment to be grateful. Grateful for family, for warmth, for the chance to rest after a long day of surviving and celebrating in the best way you knew how. Because history isn't just about the grand moments. It's also about the quiet victories, the embers of laughter, the soft glow of a Christmas tree, and the stubborn hope that next year, maybe you'll finally untangle those lights on the first try. Sleep well, and may your dreams be merry, bright, and entirely free of canned cranberry sauce. Good night.